Danish people are entitled to club a Swedish person over the head with a stick if they cross the frozen sea between the two countries. During the Dano-Swedish War of 1657–58, Sweden invaded Denmark in a most unusual manner. King Charles X Gustav of Sweden planned to cross to the Öresund strait by boat when waters were calm. However, in late January 1658, the Öresund froze solid, and he simply marched his army across. This took the Danes entirely by surprise. They weren't expecting an attack until spring. Denmark panicked and signed the Treaty of Roskilde, which yielded disputed territory to Sweden amongst other unfavorable conditions. Ever since it's been legal for a Dane to club a Swede marching across the frozen Öresund with a stick.
Did you know that Danish people are legally entitled to club a Swedish person over the head with a stick if they cross the frozen sea between the two countries? This unusual law has roots deep in history, dating back to the Dano-Swedish War of the mid-17th century. An unexpected invasion, a hasty treaty, and a frozen sea all contributed to this peculiar piece of legislation. But why is this law in place? Let's journey back to 1657. In the mid-17th century, the Dano-Swedish War erupted. A bitter conflict, it was ignited by territorial disputes and political ambitions. A fiery mix that set Northern Europe ablaze. King Charles X Gustav of Sweden, a man of military prowess and strategic cunning, was at the helm of Swedish ambitions. His eyes were set on the fertile lands of Denmark and the strategic control of the Öresund Strait. On the other side, the Kingdom of Denmark, under the rule of King Frederick III, stood steadfast, unwilling to yield to the Swedish onslaught. The political climate of the time was a cauldron of alliances and rivalries. The two Nordic nations were not alone on the battlefield. The Dutch, the Poles, and the Brandenburgers were all entangled in this war, each with their own motivations and stakes. The Dutch wanted to keep the Baltic Sea open for their trade ships, while the Poles and Brandenburgers were more than willing to take a swipe at the ambitious Swedes. Yet, despite the complexity of the political landscape, the war was largely a contest between two formidable foes, Denmark and Sweden. Their rivalry was centuries old, dating back to the Viking era. The Dano-Swedish War was just another chapter in their long, tumultuous history. The war was marked by fierce battles, strategic maneuvers, and unexpected turns. But it was not the clashing of swords or the thundering of cannons that would define this war. Instead, it was the harsh, biting cold of a Scandinavian winter that would play a decisive role. The Swedish king took a gamble. He planned to cross the icy Öresund Strait not by boat but on foot with his entire army. It was a daring move, one that caught the Danes off guard. They were prepared for a spring attack, not a winter invasion. But the turning point of this war was not a traditional battle, it was an unexpected invasion. The frozen strait became a battlefield and the stakes were higher than ever. The course of the war was about to change, and with it the fate of two nations. In the heart of winter 1658, King Charles X Gustav of Sweden made a bold move. The Öresund Strait, usually a natural barrier between the two nations, had frozen solid. An obstacle had become an opportunity. Instead of waiting for calmer waters to cross by boat, as was the plan, the Swedish king saw a chance to catch the Danes off guard. And he took it. With the temperature dropping and the ice thickening, King Charles X Gustav ordered his men to march. Thousands of Swedish soldiers, horses and cannons began a chilling journey across the frozen strait. The rhythmic thud of boots and hooves on the ice echoed through the silent, snow-covered landscape. It was an audacious, risky move. But it was also a stroke of strategic genius. Meanwhile, the Danes, nestled in their homes, were blissfully unaware of the icy invasion unfolding. They were anticipating a spring attack, giving them a few more months to prepare. But the Swedish king had other plans. As the first signs of the invasion reached the Danish capital, the city was thrown into a state of panic. The unexpected was happening. The Swedes were coming, and they were already halfway across the strait. The Danish defenses were caught unprepared. They had been expecting boats, not a ground army marching across the ice. The Danish king and his advisors scrambled to respond, but their options were limited. The Swedish army was too close and time was running out. Fear began to grip the nation. They were staring at the possibility of a total defeat, a thought that sent chills down their spines, colder than the winter air outside. Caught off guard and fearing total defeat, Denmark made a hasty decision. They would not wait for the Swedes to reach their shores. Instead, they would go to the negotiation table, hoping to salvage what they could. But the cost of this unexpected invasion would be high, much higher than they could have ever imagined. Under pressure, Denmark signed the Treaty of Roskilde. This was a pivotal moment in Danish history, as the treaty marked the end of the Dano-Swedish War of 1657–58, but it was far from a victory for Denmark. The treaty was signed on the 26th of February 1658 in the town of Roskilde, known for its grand cathedral. The negotiations were anything but easy. Denmark was cornered, with the Swedish army having crossed the frozen Öresund strait and caught them off guard. The Danish king, Frederick III, had little choice but to agree to the terms laid out by King Charles V Gustav of Sweden. The Treaty of Roskilde was harsh. It required Denmark to cede a significant portion of its territory to Sweden. This included the provinces of Scania, Halland, Blekinge and Bornholm, as well as the Norwegian provinces of Trøndelag and Bohuslän. These were all key regions, rich in resources and strategic advantages, and their loss was a considerable blow to Denmark. The treaty also demanded Denmark to pay a hefty war indemnity to Sweden. This financial burden, combined with the loss of territory, weakened Denmark considerably. It marked the end of Denmark as a major European power and the beginning of Sweden's rise to prominence in the region. But the Treaty of Roskilde didn't just have political and economic implications, it also had a profound cultural impact. The ceded territories were home to Danish-speaking populations who suddenly found themselves under Swedish rule. This led to cultural shifts and tensions that reverberate even today. The signing of the Treaty of Roskilde also had a rather unexpected outcome. It birthed a peculiar Danish law, one that allowed Danes to club any Swede attempting to cross the frozen Öresund Strait. A law born out of a grudge, a symbol of the bitter rivalry that had developed between the two nations. This treaty marked a significant shift in the balance of power in Scandinavia. It's a testament to the unexpected twists and turns of history, and how they continue to shape the world we live in today. And from these unusual circumstances, an unusual law was born. In the wake of the unexpected Swedish invasion during the winter of 1657–58, the Danish people found themselves in a state of shock and panic. The Treaty of Roskilde had been signed under duress, and resentment towards the Swedish invaders was at an all-time high. The Danish government, eager to channel this public sentiment into a form of passive resistance, came up with a rather unique solution. They passed a law that gave Danes the right to club any Swede who attempted to cross the frozen Öresund Strait by foot, just as the Swedish army had done during the invasion. This law was not just an act of defiance, but a symbol of Danish resilience and a warning to any future invaders. It declared in no uncertain terms that the Danish people would not be caught off guard again. Over time, this unusual law became more than just a legal provision. It turned into a folk legend, a part of Danish folklore that served as a reminder of the country's turbulent past and its resolve to defend its sovereignty. It was a law born out of a unique historical event, a law that was as much about symbolism as it was about practicality. Today, the law remains on the books, although its enforcement is, of course, another matter entirely. It's highly unlikely that any Dane would actually take it upon themselves to club a wandering Swede on the frozen Öresund. But the existence of this law serves as a testament to a time when the stakes were high and the waters, quite literally, were frozen. While this law may seem absurd in today's context, it is a vivid example of how history can leave its mark on a nation's legal system. It's a quirky reminder of the lengths to which a country might go to safeguard its people and its territory. And so, this law remains, a curious relic of a turbulent time in Scandinavian history. So there you have it. A law that seems outlandish today but serves as a testament to the intricate tapestry of history, law, and culture. This unusual Danish law, allowing Danes to club any Swede daring enough to march across the frozen Öresund with a stick, is rooted deep in the past during the Dano-Swedish War of 1657–58. Let's rewind a bit. King Charles V Gustav of Sweden decided to launch an attack on Denmark, not by the traditional naval route, but by simply marching his army across the frozen Öresund Strait. The Danish were caught off guard, expecting the attack only in spring, and in their panic, they signed the Treaty of Roskilde. This treaty ceded much of their territory to Sweden and left a bitter taste of defeat. And so, this unusual law was born out of an unexpected wartime strategy and a hasty treaty signing. It may not be the most practical law in today's world where diplomacy and international relations have moved beyond the club and stick era, but it continues to stand as a symbol of national pride and historical remembrance for the Danes. It's a stark reminder of the war that reshaped the map of Scandinavia. So, the next time you hear about this law, you'll know that it's not just an odd piece of legislation, it's a reminder that sometimes history can leave behind some truly unexpected legacies.